Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Misano for another Super Formula Lights race here tonight. I'm Adam, and with me is Ron. And once again, Misano is the track we are racing at. So it's the Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli. It is a very difficult track, I would say, especially if you're in a GT3 car, but in a high downforce car like the Super Formula Light car, it should be quite easy. This 2.6 mile circuit, 4.2 kilometer circuit in Italy, 16 turns, is going to provide some great racing action. Of course, the famous turn of turn 16 heading into the front straight, the Misano corner, turns 1 and 2, the first chicane right away, and then into turns 4, 5, and 6. That is an absolute hard time to navigate. You're going to lose some grip through Rio into turn 5 and 6. Turn 7, you got a chance to make a pass in these cars all the way down into turn 8. Turn 9 and 10, you're just going to have to maybe follow single file a little bit as they head down into the back straight. Turn 11, very difficult to navigate. You don't want to overshoot the corner at all, or your day is going to be potentially done through there. And then, of course, rounding out the lap, very low grip corners once again. But we're going to see these high downforce cars navigate their way through. So, well, once again, I'm Adam along with Ron here on Apex Racing TV. Ron, how are you doing here this evening?
Oh, well, I am doing all right, trying to get iRacing loaded after we had a brief technical issue before we went live, but really excited to get this season going. You know, I was very happy to be a part of the last Apex Racing Academy open wheel series, that being the Apex Racing Academy F4s earlier on this year, and that season was incredibly tense. It was 10 rounds in Formula 4 cars. Those cars drift incredibly heavy. Of course, here in these Super Formula Lights, I don't think the drift is going to be as much of a factor in this series as it is these drivers just trying to get a grips to this car. It's somewhat new here in the world of iRacing, only introduced a few seasons ago, but I'll tell you what, I purchased it pretty much immediately, and it is a fantastic car, but it can put you right on your butt if you get it a teeny tiny bit wrong. So I think these drivers are going to really enjoy the season that we have in front of us. 8 rounds starting from tonight, and I think this is going to be a fantastic season. Really happy to be a part of it.
Fabio Grassetto currently fastest in qualifying with a 127.488 as we are on board with Nicholas Rabnussen, who is currently has not put up a time yet, but we are on board. Here he comes down the back straight. Well, excuse me, where is he right now? He is currently going...
is heading into turn at number 8, which is a really challenging corner, but I think
you.
that's going to be a good overtaking opportunity.
Yes, that will be one of the places to keep our eyes on for overtakes and everything else. Of course, some potential chaos, I would say, in the opening lap. And now Rasmussen down the back straight where you're going to go into the turn 11 and takes a lot of curve but stays on the line. Turn 12 and 13, and this is where it gets a little bit sketchy. You got to get slowed all the way down, get that brake all the way down, and then slow the car up, and away he goes. Very comfortable lap so far. You don't want to go any above those sausage curves before turn 16. Gets a little bit wide on the exit of turn 16, but crosses the line and will be in the 9th spot, a 127.86. A decent lap, but I think could definitely find some additional time in there.
We're going to be seeing some very heavy hitters start to set some qualifying times here in this series, considering the amount of drivers that we have out on the race course at any given time. It is a split qualifying session that we have here for the first 10 minutes. The AM drivers are out on the circuit. You can tell based off the small little white ticker right next to their name on the left-hand side of your screen on our timing tower. And then the drivers in green, those are our pro drivers going to be fighting for the top class championship and probably some wins as well. So right now we're in the final 12 minutes of this qualifying session, so we're starting to see some of these pro drivers make their way on to the racetrack, and you see that that timing tower start to populate. Currently 18 drivers to set a qualifying time in this session so far. It's the Italian of Grosseto setting a 1 minute 27.488. Very good lap time from the Italian so far, but right now we've got those pro drivers beginning to set their laps. Is Ben Ford in that number 16 position right now, right as Schneibel, the German, goes up to the top of the board. Very nice lap time from the pro.
Track will start to grip up slowly here as we are heading into the last 10 minutes here of qualifying. Schneibel at 127.2, so yeah, it's definitely a lot more grip. Rasmussen up to a 127.625. So they are flying through here. And now Olsen up to a 127.3, just a 10th behind Schneibel. So some quick times we're starting to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see some 126s before we get out of qualifying, because again, there's a lot of time to be found on this track. You can see a lot of drivers are taking a lot of the curbs on the apex, so they're really getting on top of these curves. Good exit out for Saznov. He goes to 16th fastest though, 128.6.
Right now, these drivers negotiating this track and setting quicker and quicker lap times. This is a really tough combination. This track originally designed for motorcycles, so seeing these plucky little Super Formula Lights cars that usually be racing exclusively in Japan, it is a really tough challenge that these cars and these drivers are trying to brace themselves for, as you pointed out earlier, Adam. 16 corners around this circuit and really 16 challenges thrown in every single one of them. This is a real tough track, but all these drivers negotiating the challenge quite well. I'll tell you what, the first time I load into the iRacing session earlier on this afternoon, and I'm not making this up, folks, I saw a driver end up in the barriers. So the challenge that these drivers are trying to negotiate just in this qualifying session alone, let alone the races we have in store later on this afternoon, is going to be tough.
Lee Aberdeen, 235 kilometers per hour into this final complex of corners, absolutely flying. Gets back onto the gas, putting up somewhat of a reasonable lap time here. Green in sector 1, about reasonable in sector 2. Sector 3 comes out of the final corner. That may be an off track. That's pretty far out there on the final corner. Crosses the line, is quickest through there, and goes up into the 4th spot. So good run there by Lee Aberdeen.
And we're coming towards the end of this qualifying session in the not too distant future. Less than 5 minutes left to go on the clock. It's still looking good for Rasmussen at the north end of that qualifying order at that 127.221. But I will say not a whole lot of time separating himself and Schnebel there in P2. You can see those drivers separated by, what would that be? That would be, I think, 12 thousandths of a second, wouldn't that be, Adam? That is incredibly tight at the north end of the field.
That is incredibly tight. That's pretty much one of these corners, especially like a turn like turn 16. You can lose so much time through there just with a simple mistake. So, and Rasmussen going to be sitting somewhat comfortably right now, and they're going to come out to do another lap here as they head out of pit exit. Schnebel right now 127.233. Can they find that additional 12 hundredths of a second to get in to the pole position here this evening, I should say? Leonard Schnebel right now in the Alcantech NHR by Braincrow car, currently sitting in that second spot, navigating these very tough corners out of turn 10 into turn 11. Again, you can, if you make just a simple mistake through here, because you're going to be absolutely flat out through these corners, one simple mistake and your day is done through there into turns 12, 13, and 14. You got to get on the brakes so much through these complex of corners. Gets it slowed down nicely. Very comfortable ride through here. Can he get the job done here this evening and take pole position? Comes to turn 16 now. Gets a little bit wide, but in control of this Super Formula Light car, and he crosses the line. He will not. He is so close, a 127.224. Absolutely almost has it, 3 thousandths of a second off.
3 thousandths of a second. You've got to be kidding me. I'll tell you what, folks, if that is a sign of things to come this season, you better stay tuned, because this is going to be a whole lot of fun. It's not over for Schnebel, though. We still have a decent amount of time left to go in this qualifying session, and 3 thousandths of a second around a racetrack like this, that could be a matter of just hitting an apex and being like 3 inches closer to the inside line going through a corner. That is not a time, that's not an insurmountable amount of time between Rasmussen and Schnebel's. Olsen, playing a spoiler, goes up to the top at a 127.216. So the Swedish driver coming in with a shock to grab the provisional pole as things stand at the moment.
Rasmussen is currently on track right now on a lap. He's at a 127.221. And look at Aberdeen goes to the pole with a 127.085. The Kiwi gets it done here this evening with just seconds remaining in qualifying. Nicholas Rasmussen, a 127.221. Can they find the additional seconds here, the tenths of a second that they're going to need now? 2 tenths to get the pole to get on top of Lee Aberdeen. What a lap there. I thought we were going to see 126, is not quite there. A 127.209 for Schnebel, and here comes Rasmussen. Lotov, excuse me, into the 6th spot, a 127.5. Good lap from them. And I think we still have Rasmussen on track, unless he's already crossed the line. It did not improve. Here he comes to turn 16. Can he get one more time lap? Last lap this time for Rasmussen. I don't think he improved that time. He did not, a 128.6. Ron, this is going to be an absolutely spectacular end here to qualifying.
And it's coming very, very soon. Less than a minute left to go on the clock, and then the 21 car field that we have right now is going to get split up into 2 races, and then we're going to have some more races for these drivers to whittle it down to eventually only, I believe, 13 drivers tonight are going to be taking the grid in the A final race that we have later on this evening. But this qualifying session is already providing us with a whole lot of action. Incredibly close up at the north end of the field. Drivers going tit for tat when it comes to these lap times. Thankfully, we haven't seen traffic get involved in this qualifying session. Certainly a blessing for Nicholas Rasmussen, who's rounding his way around the very challenging turn number 10 on what is going to be his final lap in this qualifying session. You can see him going up the gears, down this back not so straight straightaway. The long flat out blast towards the end of this lap of the qualifying session is over, and he is not going to be able to complete that time.
Unfortunate there for Nicholas Ravmussen not being able to cross the line before the end of the session, but you know, good effort by him. But Lee Aberdeen on the pole, a 1:27.085, an absolute stunning lap time in the Super Formula cars. Again, I don't think we're quite done seeing those faster lap times quite yet, especially with a couple more races than just a normal Super Formula race. Of course, there are 2 heat races, and an A and a B final and an A final. So we're going to the grid here. And Ron, what is the lineup here tonight?
Here we go, taking a look at the starting grid for the first heat race of this season and this series as well. Lee Aberdeen is going to be leading them to green. Tobias Olsen in P number 2. That's going to be the Hungarian driver of Deshi in P number 3. Tombolov is going to be starting this race in 4th. Then we've got Christian Glamsetter in the number 118 car. He's going to be starting this race in P5. Josh Sentence, the Brit, in P number 6. Jestrombach, in a driver who we've seen before in Apex Run Series. He's going to be starting this race in 7th alongside Bognar, the Swedish driver. Bryant in 9th. Oh boy, I feel like I'm going to butcher that pronunciation. Craig Vololik in P number 10. Toby Ward is going to be starting this race in 11th. Auk Ballet in P number 12. And I believe, if I'm not too mistaken, I think that is going to be that is going to be our grid for this first heat race of this first season of the Apex Racing Academy Super Formula Light Series. 12 cars for this first heat race, and the top 6 are going to advance and lock their spot into the A main race that we have later on this evening. Gonna be some frayed nerves in this race. We'll just have to wait and see how things shake out, Adam.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lights on and 5 lights go out, and away we go here at Misano in the ARA Super Formula Lights here in the heat race number 1. A good start off the line here. Everybody navigating through the first chicane, and the only chicane that's probably the more difficult part of this track, but the 199 Lee Aberdeen, great start off the line, leading early here, but a pass for the 4th and 5th spot further back, and that is the trying to grab the number, the 252 of Leonard Bognar. Moves himself into 6th place now, and everybody single file trying to figure each other out, feeling this track out, see how much actual grip is there. But a little bit of a twitch there, I thought, from somebody as we were on the rear bumper of somebody. I couldn't tell who it was, but I thought I saw a little bit of a twitch or maybe contact. But now single file out, a little bit of a gap here. We're seeing about 5 cars grouped together in the front, single file. Further back, it's starting to get a little bit crazy. Bryant now trying to get by the 23 of Craig Vorlick. But you can see that gap on our timetable here, about a 1 second gap between these 2 groups of cars here. But back out in front to complete lap number 1, Lee Aberdeen leading here with just 10 minutes, or excuse me, just under 9 minutes to go.
He is going to try and hit his marks throughout the rest of this race, though, because if he makes a teeny tiny little mistake, he's going to be in for a world of hurt. As I said earlier, only the top 6 cars in these heat races are going to advance into that A main final. Unless they finish outside that, then they're going to be dropped down into the B main, and they're going to have to fight like hell to try and get their way back into the main show. But right now, Aberdeen's still leading them, as you said, but only 0.2 of a second separating himself and Olsen in P1 and P2 respectively. We're riding on board with Christian Glamsetter in that number 4 position right now, and you can see currently the top 6 only separated by 3 seconds, and the top 5 separated by less than a second and a half, about 2.5 laps into this race. So Aberdeen, as much as he may feel comfortable with the way his race car is driving, and definitely after the pace that he set in that qualifying session, he's still gonna have to keep it incredibly clean and run a very smart race if he wants to make it into that A main later on tonight.
Now everybody's starting to figure each other out quite nicely here. The top 6 seeming very comfortable, as Jess Trubakin currently holds that final transfer spot. But Bryant, he has maybe some games here to try and play, and you got to wonder, he's been trying to fight this battle now for a for about 2 laps now, trying to get by, but they've brought in Toby Ward, the Englishman, trying to just hold on and defend this 9th spot. But again, a good pass here by Bryant, not by Bryant, by Craig.
That was by
Orlick.
Bryant. There he goes, side by side with Ward on corner exit. This is a 3-way dogfight careening their way. That's going to be through the turn number 4 and 5 section. Right now, all these drivers racing incredibly hard, not really doing themselves too many favors, though, because right now, a sentence has gone off the track. That's heading through turn number 6. You could see him in the back, a shot off the circuit, and I think he had his car nosed into the barrier, but either way, terrible stuff from the Brit of Sentence. He has dropped down the running order, and you can see him pulling over to the side of the road. He is going to be out of this heat race. The first casualty comes from Josh Sentence. He lost 5 positions as a result of this, and here is the replay.
Gets just a little bit wide and oversteers, can't correct it, hard into the barrier, and definitely that front nose is completely gone, and I think his day is also done here this evening, and it is. He's in the pits, and he is done here tonight. But Lee Aberdeen out in front by just 0.2 of a second, with Tokabola currently almost just a second behind the leader here. But you can see still 5 cars trying to battle this out here. We still have the transfer spot, who's kind of having a lonely race here, Destrubakken. He is 2 seconds off this battle here, but also has a 2-second gap behind him. So he'll be very comfortable in that spot and be happy to stay in that final transfer spot. Dexy currently 1.6 behind the race leader, 0.5 of a second away from Glammeister. Currently, again, just single file all the way through. Everybody just trying to find a way to pass. But again, these cars go so quick around a circuit like this because it was made for motorcycle racing. Of course, we have seen GT3 racing here in the past. And even in GT3 cars, very difficult to find those overtaking opportunities. Almost contact there with Glammeister into the rear bumper of Toga Bolotov. Now good slipstream down the back, going into turn 11. This could get dangerous. They're going to go into again, a heavy braking zone. You got to slow up as much as you can. Down the inside goes Dexy, and he makes the move happen. And a good move out in front by Glammeister to get that 4th spot. Wow, some great racing already happening here at Misano and heat race number 1.
That was actually Dexy trying to get a move done around the outside of Glamsetter, heading through turn at number 13. A very challenging corner with the unforgiving track limits on this circuit. And as I say that, I see a car going incredibly wide out of the final corner. Not ideal for them in the slightest. But this front pack fight is still incredibly tense. But I will say, ever since about lap 2, when I mentioned that the front 5 were separated by only a second and a half, all that battling has spread them out a teeny tiny bit. It's still Aberdeen in the lead, and that's Ward around coming out of the first chicane. That's a quick spin, which was very common for all of these drivers. So plenty of spins coming out of that very challenging first chicane to kick off this lap. Looks like Toby Ward is going to be another victim of that. Despite that, he's still up 1 spot from where he started. However, he is the last car left on the circuit right now. Here's a replay. Heading through turn number 1, you can see these drivers abusing those track limits. Big snap of oversteer on corner exits, and it looked like that car was loose heading into the corner as is. So Toby Ward fighting an incredibly ill-handling race car in the early stages of this race. There wasn't a whole lot of hope for him to make his way into the A final that we'll have later on this evening, but with that spin, that pretty much all but assures that he is going to be in that B main later.
Unfortunate there for Ward, but now back out on front into the front. Olsen and Aberdeen battling for the race lead, so close to each other, 0.2 of a second separating these two, and that's been like that since the drop of the green flag. Tobias Olsen just maybe wants this heat race win. Dexy back down to 5th, trying to continue his battle with Glammeister, trying just to maybe get by one more time, trying to make a move around the outside last time around. Unfortunately lost his position again. But now Lee Aberdeen 0.3 of a second. It's that gap slightly growing through these corners. So you got to wonder if maybe Aberdeen has a little bit more downforce on that car. But here comes Tobias Olsen looking around the outside, but Aberdeen sees that move coming and blocks him off. And Aberdeen he's just being calm, cool, and collected, not making a huge defensive effort or making any big moves defensively. But here we go again. Olsen not going anywhere, it seems like.
What Aberdeen is doing at this stage is he's driving an incredibly smart race. He's been able to position his car in the right spot to hold off any sort of challenge that Olsen has. However, I feel like it'll be a matter of when, not if, that driver goes for a move. It looked like Olsen was maybe trying to sweep around the outside, heading into turn number 12, not close enough to try and get that move done. They're going to be taking the white flag this time by, so it's going to be only one more lap to go after they ran their way around the final corner in just a few moments' time. You can see those two dicing. It looked like Olsen was maybe trying to sneak a wheel down the inside heading into the final corner. I don't think so. That corner is tough enough as is single file, let alone side by side. We've got battles all up and down the field right now as Glamsetter is still trying to hold off any sort of challenge from Deshi right behind, but Aberdeen still holding off any sort of challenge that Olsen has had thus far. They are on the white flag now, and I'm curious, is Olsen going to be able to get the move done? These two drivers are teammates at Ice Cold Racing, so maybe not going to force the issue as much as they would if they were separated from each other. But at this stage, so early on into the season, we saw in the Apex Racing Academy F4 Championship earlier on this year that there is a very intense storyline between some teammates crashing into each other in the early stages. So I think Ice Cold Racing may be heaving some warnings from the past and telling these drivers, hey, you're running P1 and P2 right now. You've got about 1.3 seconds to Tolbakov right behind him, P number 3. You don't have a whole lot to gain if you race each other really, really hard. So at this stage, maybe they're ignoring my advice as they're going to be side by side heading through 12.
Outside goes Olsen, but can't make the move stick. Aberdeen defending hard now as they go into the final few corners here in heat race number 1. Olsen, mistake there into the final complex in turn 15. Here they come down into turn 16, and Lee Aberdeen will be very comfortable to know that his teammate made a mistake for the race win, and Lee Aberdeen will win heat race number 1. Good race there by Tobias Olsen, but a slight mistake in the turn 14 just cost him a potential chance at an overtake for the win. Go ahead.
In the end, this man, Gestrombakken, is going to hold on to that final transfer spot. Very nicely played from the IGL Coding Sende Trekta School driver. Up one spot from where he started, got a move done earlier on in the race and holds on to that final transfer spot. No AM driver punching their ticket into that A main race. They're all going to have to go to the B main that we'll have later on this evening. And speaking of a race that we have going for you this evening, I think we're going to get the starting grid for Heat 2 in just a couple of moments time. If it's anything to go off of, I think it's going to be very, very intense. That was a hard fought fight in that first heat race, but usually in these Apex Run series, it is a matter of when, not if, that one of these heat races is incredibly, incredibly chaotic. And it's going to be Scheibel leading them to green in that number 159 car. He's going to be joined by Nicholas Rasmussen on that front row. It's Grosseto, the AM driver, very nicely played from both Grosseto and Bozueta in the number 222 car, the Canadian. Very nicely played from both of those drivers. Wemstra in P number 5, Zanistov in P number 6. And before we can do that, the green flag is out and the drivers are already on their way. Don't even have enough time to go through the starting grid, Adam, as they're careening their way into the turn number 1 chicane. Oh, contact in the back already.
Massive chaos in the back, and everybody's spinning out about the back half of the field. And now, yes, another one spinning around in the chicane, and the chicane fights once again here at Misano, but it looks like everybody getting back going with Schneibel currently out in the race lead. Schneibel in the 159 out in front of Nicholas Rasmussen, and hopefully here in just a moment we'll have an instant replay of what just happened. Fabio Grosseto currently maintaining the third. Here's the replay from the start of the race into turn 1. Janik Plesher currently gets spun around, major contact there, and front wing galore, it seems like, through turns 1 and 2. And that's an unfortunate start to this one, especially when you want to be in that top 6. And that, it didn't happen within that top 6, but man, what a tough way to start your race here in heat race number 2.
with all of that chaos, it's a Russian driver of Sazonov holding on to that final transfer spot as things stand currently, and I have a feeling that's not going to change because as it stands at the moment, he has about 6 seconds between himself and P number 7. So all that chaos on lap number 1, multiple cars called out by that, and probably about $400,000 worth of carbon fiber laying to rest through turn number 1 and 2 right now. Schnebel blinks in and out of existence very, very briefly, but that's tough stuff for all of these drivers. We are expecting that first chicane to be a trouble spot. It's just inviting enough whereby these drivers are going to try and risk it, but at the same time, it's just stretched out at a bit too high speed to really go for an absolute gutsy move. And just sadly, some drivers really early on into the season, at the very start of the second heat race of this season, going for a somewhat aggressive move, and sadly, it ends in absolute tears for multiple drivers.
That's exactly right. Now, Grassetto, currently in that third spot, the first of the AM drivers in the top 6, and then Boizoda, currently the Canadian, in that fourth spot, as an amateur driver. So some guys moving up the field, so we might be setting up for a good final here this evening. But you gotta wonder what is to happen in the remaining minutes of this one. We thought we saw a banger of a race on the last one, but again, it was only a couple of tenths separating the leaders at the line. And this is where, in the second heat race, maybe some guys who are looking on the outside in, actually really the top 6 currently safe, 19-second gap between P7 and P6. So quite a major gap. So if you're in that transfer spot right now, you kind of just want to be calm, cool, and collected. You don't want to make any aggressive, high-risk moves, especially on a circuit like this, where mistakes will bite you, as we saw in that wreck in turn 1. Good aerial shot here.
That's exactly right, Adam. You brought up a very good point. Just keeping a good head on your shoulders is key for these races, as we see Jeff Lutz exiting out on track. He is one of the drivers involved in that Shamazel at the very start. He is 2 laps down. He is hopelessly out of contention, so we're probably going to be seeing him. Well, I say probably. We are definitely going to be seeing him in that B final, the 14-minute B final that we have coming up for you right after this heat race comes to a close. But I kind of take responsibility for that first lap incident, because I said right before we grabbed the green and took a look at the starting grid that usually in these Apex Run series, one heat race is a bit more tame, like the first heat race that we had here this evening. Then you get to that second one and it is absolute pandemonium. We saw that on lap number 1. At this stage, I feel like that may be the only sort of incident that we have in this race. The field spread out a lot more than they were during that first heat race this evening. It was the front 5 separated by 1.5 seconds, about 3 laps into that first heat race. Here in the second, we're coming to the start of lap 4, and currently Schneibel has a 1.6 second lead over Nicholas Rasmussen in P number 2. So these drivers may be keeping it a bit calm after seeing that drama that happened through turn 1.
Might as well. There's nothing to gain at this point for drivers right now, and for Schneibel, if you can just grow that gap just a little bit more, you can start maybe, not going 100% save your energy for the finals coming up. Of course, Grassetto, he is battling here with the Canadian in the 109, and this is going to be an absolute, I think, a good battle to keep our eyes on. And of course, further back in Ford, of course, in this battle as well for the 4th spot, and this might get a little bit interesting, I think, for the 4th spot. Again, I'm not entirely sure, again, what you're going to really gain, really trying to push the issue, push a pass or something like that, especially in corners like through turn 11. And he is instead, Ben Ford, he's going to make a move down the inside. He doesn't take my advice at all. He's telling me to be quiet and just do what I do and just talking to a microphone. And Ford, he moves himself into the 4th spot, getting by Boizueta. So currently now, so the top 6 somewhat shuffling through here in 1 through 6. 7th, 8th, and 9th pretty much out of this battle and out of this heat race entirely. Pletcher currently 31 seconds behind this gap. Wemstra 8th, and again, part of that incident earlier on here. So, but we got to feature and showcase some of these drivers because you never know what would have happened without that crash. I feel like we could have probably seen some good single file racing. Again, here's a replay at the restart with Wemstra. Wemstra just trying to make a move around the outside, stay safe, and gets net-coded.
That was horrible netcode.
You could have fit an entire book collection with that space. Oh, that's an unfortunate incident. Wemstra will be kicking himself after seeing that replay. So, but Ron Schneibel, 1.4 second gap. It looks like Rasmussen trying to somewhat close the gap a little bit.
There's been some pretty impressive people that we've seen so far in this race. Of course, Schneibel still pulling away from Rasmussen, who, despite that, still has the fastest lap of the race at 127.158. I also want to shout out Ford, who's running in that 4th position, got that move done on Boisweta not very long ago. He is up 6 spots from where he started this race. Very nicely played from the driver of that car. You can see him careening his way into that first chicane right now, up 6 spots from where he started in that CRF Motorsports Super Formula Lights car. Very nicely played from that driver. And last person I really feel the need to shout at is the people who managed to convince Wemstra to get that internet connection that he has, because I've seen some bad, like absolutely terrible netcode in my time on iRacing. That, as you said, you could fit a whole book collection. You could put a high-rise apartment building between him and the car that was next to him. That was an insane amount of netcode, and it's just absolute heartbreak. But thankfully for him, as we take a look at another angle of this start of the race, Shamazels, you can see all the chaos going around behind him, and he could, oh my god, that was pretty much an entire car width between him and the car that was spinning around. He had it made. He had it golden. He was moving around the outside. He was away from all the chaos, and possibly the worst piece of netcode I have seen in my entire life spins him around. But as we saw from his teammates at Ice Cold Racing earlier on in that first heat race, he has a very fast race car, and I think he may be a force to be reckoned with in that B main that we have coming up later on this evening.
Well, after watching that netcode, you just never know what can happen, especially on iRacing. White flag this time, one more time around for Schneibel, currently 1.7 second gap, very comfortable race lead over Nicholas Rasmussen. And again, a great aerial view of the beautiful Misano circuit. Again, host MotoGP and GT3 racing. MotoGP racing on this track is fabulous to watch. You can see why, just based on the undulation, well, not even the undulation of the circuit, it's more of just the flow of it. High speed corners, low speed corner, mid speed corners, just absolutely a perfect Italian track. And here comes Schneibel into the final section of this track, into turn, I think that was what, turn 13, I think they just came out of, into...
That was turn 10.
Oh, thank you. I don't have a track map in front of me with the cars going on it, but that is absolutely fine. But turn 11, Schneibel currently doing his best just to maintain a gap, not give Rasmussen any such hope to win this heat race. But a calm, cool, collected heat race after the opening incident, and Schneibel will currently come into the last couple of corners here at Misano. Goes into turn 16, which is appropriately labeled Misano. Well, don't go too far off track, Schneibel. You got to keep that car in one piece. Schneibel wins heat race number 2. Rasmussen in second. Grosseto in third. The only amateur on the podium. Ben Ford, 4th place after making a good inside move in the first section of the track. 5th place, Boisetta currently in that 5th spot. Sanzoov currently in 6th, the Russian being the final to make it out in the top 6. But a good heat race, I thought. Wemstra, I don't know what else we can say about his race. He was the unfortunate victim to some of the worst netcode I have seen, Ron, you have ever seen, and he'll be disappointed with the 7th place finish. Had some decent lap times, definitely be in the top 6. Pletcher, 8th place. Greg Orenko currently in 9th. crosses the line 50 seconds behind the pack, and Jeff Lutz in 10th. And we have 2 DNFs, and that's Walsh in one of our DNFs. So grid coming up quick here. Let's look at the lineup for our finals here, the A final. Leonard Bognar looks like on the pole with Kevin Wemstra in second. Third place is going to be Craig Vorlick and Janik Plesher in fourth. Fifth, Tom Bryant in the 242 machine. Sixth is Yuri Grorenko in sixth. Seventh, Toby Wards. Eighth, Jeff Lutz. Ninth, Josh Settons. 10th is going to be Mark Swain. 11th, Del Akbalut. And 12th, Jay Walsh here in this next race here. Grid is forming up here. We'll see the lights here in just a moment. Ron, this final is going to be very interesting.
It absolutely will be. The lights are out and the drivers are on their way, and that's a terrible start farther in the back. The driver's already shuffling and clawing to try and get around that stopped car on that starting grid. But you can see hard fighting already at the north end of the field. I was going to say for Zwemstra, it may be unfortunate that got caught out by that incident at the very beginning of that second heat race, but it's allowed him to start at the front of this B main, and you can see some light contact already. That was between P4 and between P4 and P3. Hard battling between all these drivers. Some nice drifts as well, it must be said. We're riding on board with the car, heading their way into turn number 7 here in the not too distant future. That's actually turn number 8. I apologize, the hairpin. And you can see a driver going off as well. An interesting interpretation of track limits from a lot of these drivers. Thankfully, they get through the first chicane clean, which we couldn't say about that second heat race, but the front 3 breaking away from the rest of the field, which is a great position to be in those heat races. The top 6 advance. Here in the B main, only the top 3 advance. So right now it's Bognar leading them, Zwemstra in P2, the only pro driver in this B main field, and right now it's Craig Verlogic right there in P number 3, holding on to that final transfer spot as Ward battling hard and Lutz goes for a spin.
Lutz, a bad spin heading into the heavy braking area of the final sector, and gets her back going again, and gets the car back pointed the right way, and there goes a spin for P3, and that is Craig Borlick, and he is falling down the order. An unfortunate spin there off the final corner, and Misano's final corner. Misano bites here. Not a corner I would typically see a spin like that, especially how far he was off exit. Had to get a bad run and got some oversteer. We'll hopefully see a replay of that. But what a turn of events here for some drivers, as now Zemstra has gone down the order. But here's a replay of Craig Borlick, and coming into turn 16, looking all right so far. Gets on the curb outside, loses it completely, and saves the car from going in. Nope, never mind. Hits the wall, minor damage, but Zemstra has also fallen down the order to P7, was in a podium spot and in a top 3 to move on.
This is absolute heartbreak for Zwemstra. Hopefully you can find a replay to see what in the world happened to him. It must have been a teeny tiny mistake that is going to catch him out badly. But right as I was saying that the front 3 seemed fairly set in stone, he can throw that entirely out the window. It's still the suite of Bognar leading them. And this was the incident that caught out Zwemstra. We're taking a look at that is heading his way now into turn 5 and 6. And I don't have a good feeling about this at all. On corner exit, spins it up, and very similar to what I saw some drivers do earlier on. I think we had an incident very similar to that at the start of the first heat race. That 5 and 6 section is incredibly tricky for all of these drivers. It's designed for motorcycles, this circuit is, and that section is just too spread out enough to really be tight and flowing. I cannot get the line through that corner to save my life, and it looks like some drivers in this series getting caught out by it as well.
As we are approaching 4 minutes of the 14 minutes here in the B final here this evening, lap number 3, Brian in that 3rd spot, and we're starting to see some of those, the only pro driver, Zemstra, in 7th, so we are going to see most likely than not All three drivers moving on here this evening are all amateur drivers, which is huge here in ARA Super Formula Lights. And here comes Toby Ward down the inside, getting passed by, the 215 of Janik Pletcher. Good move down the inside by Pletcher. Has to defend a little bit off into turn 14 and into turn 15, but manages to pull a gap. Doesn't get too wide, gets a little bit of that tire on the curb, and will line up turn 16. Now is free to chase down Bryant, which is in his sights. He's only 2 seconds exactly away, but a whole lot of time remaining for Pletcher to catch up to Toby Bryant.
There is one person in the whole world that is rooting for Pletcher and Ward to catch up to this man, Tom Bryant, and that is Wemstra. He's currently 9.6 seconds back of our leader of Bognar, but he's only about 5 seconds off of this man, Tom Bryant, and if we get some battling, he could get in the mix of that fight as well. He's currently stuck behind the car of Lutz, sticking out a little bit with that very popping livery on that Super Formula Lights car. He's up 2 spots, even with that spin that he had earlier on in the race. Running a P6 right now, make that P7 as Wemstra gets a move done heading through turn at number 8. Some textbook stuff from the Dutch driver on the driver from Belgium, but right now Wemstra, he is a man on a mission. There's only one, as it stands at the moment, there would only be one pro driver not making it in to that A final race, and that would be Wemstra. He's running in 6th right now. We know that he has a fast race car. He has not had any luck at all so far in this first race of the season, but right now Wemstra, if he just puts his nose to the grindstone, he could try and pull this out. This race a little bit longer. We saw 10 minutes in the heat races. Now we've got 14 in this B final, so Wemstra has the advantage of time on his hands. He also may have the advantage of Pletcher and Ward battling hard with Bryant. If those three start to battle really hard, we could see Wemstra appear in that fight in the not too distant future.
Pletcher somewhat slowly closing the gap as Tom Bryant has lost the time to the second place of Gorenko. About 2 second gap between second and third, and the third place gap falling to fourth place Pletcher. And you can just tell by how Pletcher is just trying to somewhat keep up here with the second place runner of Gorenko. And currently Pletcher, he's lapping here in the, I gotta pull it up here. Where is Pletcher right now? Pletcher is at a 127.8, and that was his best lap time for Bryant. Bryant is at a 128.6, so definitely a very big lap time difference between the fourth and third place runner currently. And you can just see it on the timing board there as well on your screen. This is going to get interesting, I think, with the final few moments here in this B main. Of course, Pletcher now has closed the gap and right in the slipstream. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries and sets up a move before this next lap. I would say definitely can get the slipstream down between turn 10, 11, and 12. Just a matter of can he get side by side or not? Bryant's going to have to start defending here as they come through the chicane of turns 1, 2, and into turn 3. But it might not be enough. Currently, Pletcher, 128.2 was his last lap time. And Ron, this is starting to heat up for the final transfer spot.
Yeah, I do not have a good feeling at all when it comes to Bryant's chances of making his way into that A final race. As you pointed out, Pletcher much quicker, and even with a big slide hang through turn number 8, very lucky to keep that going in a straight line. He didn't lose too much time as he saw a small little lockup from Bryant right up in front of him. Pletcher at this stage, he's going to be exiting turn number 10, then he's going to go onto that massive flat out blast towards the end of this lap, and Pletcher is going to close that gap right up the The trouble point with this long flat out blast though is that it doesn't end with a heavy braking zone. You have to go through the really tricky corner of turn number 13 first, and we haven't seen many drivers go for a move like that, but turn 14, that is going to be Pletcher's best friend, and Brian taking an aggressive line, sticking to that inside line, trying to break that draft that Pletcher is having, but I feel like it is a losing effort. As we saw, Pletcher very fast. Bryant, he's put together a very valiant effort, up 2 spots from where he started this race, but I think it's going to be a matter of just a few moments time when Pletcher gets that move done side by side. Hang it to turn number 1, Pletcher on that outside, and Bryant's going to hold him off. Very nicely played from Tom Bryant to hold on to that P3 spot for now. I feel like, as I just said, it's a matter of when, not if, that Pletcher is going to get that move done. But as these two drivers start to battle, you got the two right in front of them of Bognar and Rigorego. Up the road, they are pulling away dramatically from these two. Currently, Brian is 7 seconds off of our leader, Bognar, but right now it's Pletcher still racing him very, very hard, trying to go the move around the outside, cutting back to the inside line on the exit of turn number 8. They're going to be side by side, heading into the 9 and 10 section right now. Brian's on the inside, trying to break as late as he can to hold off the challenge from Pletcher, but ends in tears as Brian goes for a spin.
Unfortunate there for Tom Bryant. Just loses the rear end of the car, and he is not going to be able to transfer on. But wow, Tom Bryant, an unfortunate mistake there. Probably just came in just a little bit too hot and just loses the rear. Let's take a look at the replay. And Bryant, side by side, very narrow into this corner. Can't get the entry just right and just loses the rear end. That's all that happened.
Oh, that's so tough there for Brian. He was driving his heart out, trying to hold on to that spot, really for dear life. And speaking of, Toby Ward trying to remain on the racetrack for dear life. He braked incredibly late, heading into turn number 1 and barely kept it on the racing surface. Looks like Ward is going to lose out on that spot to Zwemstra. He gets that move done to slot his way into P4. Now, at this stage, Zwemstra needs to put his nose to the grindstone. He's got 3 minutes left to try and surmount a challenge on Pletcher to close a 3-second gap. The real question is, with only 3 minutes left to go to close that 3-second gap, will Zwemstra be able to do it? Is Pletcher going to hold on to that final transfer spot, or is it going to be Zwemstra holding out, man? I really can't decide how this race is going to end.
Well, last time around, Pletcher was a 129.3, and I understand that was with a pass for this third and final transfer spot, but Zemstra 128.0, so definitely putting in some fast lap times here. So it'll be interesting to see where they come out at as we take a nice, beautiful aerial look of Misano World Circuit. Again, a beautiful, beautiful racetrack in Italy, and Pletcher gonna have to really start putting down the throttle. You gotta just get going here, because you are in that final transfer spot, and you got someone who is hunting you down, who has now decreased the gap to now 2.8 seconds between Zemstra and Pletcher. This is all coming down here with just 2 minutes remaining. I think next time by should be the final lap for this race here. On lap number 10 will be the white flag, if I'm looking at the time correctly and thinking that through. And Pletcher, he may be comfortable right now. He doesn't have to worry about anybody in front of him and try and gain another spot, but he needs to use this open air time to really open up the gap to Zemstra. This is going to get incredibly close, but I don't think Zemstra is going to get there. He's not closing the gap enough, as Pletcher put in a 127.81 to his last lap. Zemstra was a 128.7, so almost a full second difference in lap time. But Zemstra is not going anywhere just yet. With just 1 minute remaining, we should see the white flag, shouldn't we, Ron?
Yes, I believe we will. It's going to be Bognar taking that white flag. He has been absolutely dominant in this B main, as going to try and punch his ticket into that A main race. Right now, my attention is really divided. I'm not sure whether I should look at Bognar leading this final lap of the race to try and bring it home, or whether I should look at that Pletcher and Zwemstra fight. I'm sure our producer Josh is thinking the exact same thing, because at this stage, I'm not too sure, because Pletcher last time by said a 128.1, meanwhile Zwemstra at a 127.7. So Zwemstra a little bit up and down in pace, it must be said, because the time before that, he was at a 128.7, so cutting down 1 second on his lap time in 1 lap alone. So Zwemstra at this stage, a little bit up and down. Maybe with that incident we saw from him earlier on, maybe he cooked those tires. I just don't think it's going to be enough. The checkered flag is going to come out this time by. There are 0 seconds left on the clock. I just think there's not enough time for Zwemstra to be able to move his way into that final transfer spot.
And it's not going to be enough, I don't think. It's still a 2-second gap. But our race leader, Bognar, currently comfortable out in the race lead as they come into turn 14. That gap slightly smaller to second place, but it doesn't even matter at this point, as both Bognar and Grigorenko currently leading the field here. They're going to cross the line in those transfer spots. Bognar having a little bit of fun as he crosses the line. And that third spot, Pletcher, of course, made some moves early, avoided an incident, and gets to that third and final transfer spot. Zwemstra, I don't know how we describe their evening here at Apex Racing League. Just an unfortunate error, of course. But Tom Bryan, after running in that third transfer and final transfer spot, finishes outside in that 7th spot tonight. So their evening is done, but we are now into our A final. Is that correct? Yes, our A final tonight. And we'll have the grid here shortly, and I'll have Ron do the introductions, of course, because he's doing a lot better with names than I have this evening so far.
Oh, I've been butchering them as well. I'll tell you what, we have a little bit of a break. We're in a 3-minute warm-up session, so I think this is probably going to be the calm before the storm. It's been intense so far, have some nice battling, and I think with some very heavy hitters in this race and some AM drivers looking to capitalize, it is going to be a nuts main for us this evening. 15 cars in total are going to be taking that green flag in the not too distant future. And we've got a fantastic schedule of races in front of us here this season. Misano today is going to kick this season off in 1 week's time. The series is going to be returning here on Apex Racing TV at Fuji Speedway, running on the Grand Prix layout with that chicane, but hey, I'm not the one in charge of making the schedule. We're going to be heading to Spa the week after, followed by Sebring, Hungaroring, Mugello, Motegi, and Zandvoort to round this season off. So really, in these Super Formula Lights race cars that only really run in Japan, we're only visiting 2 Japanese tracks so far this season, so these cars not going to be in their comfort zones at all, but these drivers, they're going to be trying to get into their mental zones. They're going to be using this warm-up as an opportunity to get their bearing straight and get their groove on. Some of these drivers that were running in that heat race, they haven't been able to drive for a decent amount of time, and since then, a lot of stuff has happened. We've seen some drivers go for some overly aggressive moves that may or may not have stuck. We've seen some drivers make some mistakes in sections that we haven't seen so far this evening. It's interesting to see what kind of mental state these drivers are going to be in. They just need to click it on at the right point, flip that switch, and get into the absolute groove of things for this race. 18 minutes long, that being the length of this A final. 15 cars are going to be starting it. And Adam, I know this is your first broadcast here on Apex Racing TV, but the nerves heading into this final race, regardless, from both my perspective and yours, are probably shaky a little bit just to see what kind of action we have in store for us here in this final race of the evening.
Well, can you survive the chicane? That's the real question. I mean, we've seen now a couple of races so far where we haven't seen everybody survive that, and that's where you have to be absolutely on point, especially at the start of this one. You don't want to make any early risk. It's a long race, and you know, if you gain a spot into turn 1, you gain a spot. If you don't gain a spot, it's okay. Just relax. This is a long race on a long circuit like Misano with a lot of turns. If you can make setup passes, you can overtake on this track. This track, we have seen passes. We haven't seen the single file like I thought we were going to see, especially like we saw in the heat races. But I don't think that's final. It's going to be any different. I think it's going to be completely different. Let's take a look at the lineup, Ron.
Alrighty, here we go for the final race of the evening. It's going to be Aberdeen and Schnebel leading them to green. That is going to be a dogfight between those two. Olsen looking to pick up the pieces if those two come to blows and maybe get involved in that fight as well. That's going to be Rasmussen, Tolbakov, Grassetto rounding out your top 6. Glamstetter is going to be starting this race in P7. Ben Ford in 8th. Detchi in P number 9. That's going to be Bazueda in that 10th position. Jestrom is going to be starting this race in 11th, followed by Sanzov, the Russian. Bognar, the Swede. That's going to be another Russian of Griborenko in P number 14. That's going to be Yannick Fletcher rounding out the 15-car field that we have for what's going to be a dramatic A final to kick this season and this series off.
And cars on the grid, lights about to go on, and we are about to see an 18-minute final race. 5 lights on and 5 lights out, and away we go here in the ARA Super Formula Lights. Good start here by Lee Aberdeen into turn 1. Some chaos, looks like, in the back here, almost 3 wide. And now some drivers still trying to figure each other out here as we don't see any smoke or anybody spinning around through the first chicane. Everybody making it through, but still side-by-side action through the back of the field here. 3 wide in these, they go into turns 4, 5, and 6. Here they come through turn 6 now, and everybody just still trying to figure out the spacing a little bit. But we have a battle for the race lead with Schnebel. Schnebel currently around the outside of Lee Aberdeen. Lee Aberdeen side by side almost looks like makes like contact. That time they make contact between Schnebel and Lee Aberdeen. Schnebel then takes the inside and gets the race lead. Now the teammates battling for the second spot. Olsen gets his nose out in front for just a moment and has to concede the position. But now Schnebel, can he get the job done down the inside as they go into turn 11, 12, and 13?
Oh!
Oh, wow.
Oh,
that was
my
absolutely
God.
This is getting intense in the front of the field. The top 4 separated by less than a second, and you can see Schnebel trying everything he has to hold on to the race lead. Aberdeen trying to go down the inside of turn 16. That's not going to happen through that corner, and Schnebel is going to be your race leader here on the opening lap.
Holy cow, these drivers are playing with fire. It's Schnebel leading them over Aberdeen in P2. And how about Topakov? We were riding on board with him heading down that back flat-out blast into turn number 13. He nearly put all 4 wheels off the track to try and get around and then move his way up into the podium positions. These drivers, as I just said, they are playing with fire. Racing these drivers, they're racing like it's a final lap of the race. That was lap 1 of this 18-minute A final that we have, and right now they're still battling hard as Grassetto looking to try and go for a move. Actually, no, that's Olsen trying to get a move done on Tokpatov, and oh, there you go, a spin for Olsen. He keeps it on the track, and that's a spin farther in the back involving Flesher and Glamsetter as well. So it looks like turn number 8, catching out some drivers on lap number 2. Oh, some drivers going for some simple little spins. In one case, it was a half spin, but that small little mistake can be the end of your chances here.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of replays here. Here's Gladmeister, Masseter, and here they come in to turn 8, loses it, and yep, goes for a ride, just spins themselves out, and then of course, who was that? That car, was that Pletcher? Yes, that was Pletcher, who also spun out, got themselves going. So 3 spins in kind of the same corner. And that corner, it just has such low grip. You have to slow your car way down to get through that corner. If you go in too hot, you go for a ride. And I'm seeing so far back to our live shots as some guys are creating their own line, it seems like. Some drivers taking some liberties on that corner, on that apex, but a little bit of contact as well as Destrumbakken currently up 3 spots into the eighth place here tonight. And this is gonna, again, I don't think we're quite over just yet. Just almost 4 minutes into this one, about to approach lap number 4. We're not done yet. We're not done yet, Ron. We got so much more racing as we see side-by-side action here in front of the cars where we were following. Again, I'm not sure who that is. That is the
Grigorenko and Sazonov there side by side. Yeah, I had to take those pronunciations. I'm self-conscious about that myself. But look at Grigorenko up 5 spots from where he started this race, and he gets another move done to slot his way into P at number 6. We've got Russian civil war going on right now between 2 drivers who are hard chargers thus far. Grigorenko up 8 spots, Sazonov up 5. So both of those drivers cutting their way through the field like a hot knife through butter thus far. I'm not sure if they're going to move up any more spots. We could see them maybe catch up to Olsen in the not too distant future, considering Olsen's tires that definitely cooked after that spin we saw from him just a few laps ago. But right now, Deshi battling very hard, and a spin for Grigorenko, and the worst commentator's jinx I've ever pulled off here on Apex Racing TV. Right as I was saying that he cut his way through the field like a hot knife through butter and was running incredibly well. He goes for a spin, heading through that first turn and second turn chicane. Here's a replay of what happened. I think there may have been a little bit of contact here, and there was an airborne.
Well, as they say where I'm from, you went for a ride there in a rodeo, and he went, that was a bucking bronco, it seemed like, for that incident. And wow, that's unfortunate, an unfortunate ending to that, to their race. Running some good lap time, staying with this pack, and it all comes to an end just because you're going too hot and trying to fight for just a single spot, especially through a corner that's really difficult to overtake in. Now we see Dexy and Ford getting by Dexy as they go into turn 14 into 15, and again, still battles ongoing through here. Good slipstreaming track, so these cars are going to pick up a lot of that tow as they go down the front straight and into turn 1. Bognar, the amateur who won the B final, and trying his best to get around Dexy. Had some good pace, I thought, in that B main, as Schneibel and Aberdeen still half a second gap for the race lead, and really it's half a second gaps everywhere throughout the field if you just look closely, but some big gaps as well, when Schneibel currently just maintaining just a small gap. Aberdeen second, would like to have this race win and have a sweep of the night here on Apex Racing TV. And Ron, you got to wonder here, what are these drivers thinking right now? Are they setting up passes for maybe later in this race because they know the tow is so strong, especially through turn 16 into turn 1 and turn 10 all the way down to turn 13?
I feel like these drivers at this stage may try and take it a little bit easy. Right as I say that, we saw a nice battle between Ford and Dexy. So Ford clean with a decent amount of the field, some spins thus far, and currently we only have 1 driver out of this A main race, that being Bozueta, the Canadian, out of this race 2 laps down as things stand at the moment. But I think at this stage we haven't even hit the halfway mark of this race, so maybe these drivers possibly thinking about saving up their tires, saving up their energy, and just keeping their cars clean at this stage. We've seen some incidents thus far, some hard racing that has ended in tears. So maybe at this stage, these drivers are just trying to be a little bit careful compared to how they were throughout the heats and the B final. I was going to point out the fact that we had what looked like it was going to be a fight between Tokobatov and Grassetto. However, they've actually... No, they're still pretty close. I was going to say they spread out a teeny tiny bit. They're still covered by about 0.3 of a second, heading their way into 9 and 10 right now on lap number 6. Schneidel and Aberdeen still very close. Olsen, Drustrom-Bakken. Olsen at this stage running effectively in no man's land. Drustrom-Bakken, meanwhile, only a half a second in front of Ben Ford, who's only a half a second in front of Dexy there in P number 8. Bognar as well. Close tabs on all of those drivers. That fight between this man, Jestrombakken, all the way back to the Swede of Bognar. It is a dogfight between 4 Super Formula Lights cars. That, I think, is probably going to be the fight we need to keep our eyes on for, and that'll be a good telltale sign to see what these drivers are really thinking as we slowly approach that midway point of this race.
Well, we are going to hit 9 minutes officially into the A main here, and this will be 8 laps now completed. We still got great battles, pretty much, I would say, in pretty much majority of the racetrack still. Of course, Jess Trombakken in that 6th spot, trying to just lead this pack here from 6th all the way back down to 9th. And you can just, well, not even, yeah, back down to 9th. But again, it's going to be, I would say, pretty difficult at some point. Again, the tires are going to start wearing away here momentarily, I would say, and you're going to start feeling a little bit of grip difference. And you're going to want to be planning out that move shortly. You want to get out of the dirty air, maybe get some clean air, as just Trombakken is showing. You know, being in clean air, it does have its advantages than being in a tow. As we got one spun around back there, we'll take a look at that. Who is that? That's not, well, that's
Grigorenko.
Grigorenko, okay. So another spin for them, for Yuri, and they will continue on here. Let's take a look at the replay. Again, heavy braking zone, and yep, loses the rear of the car. So, and again, these cars not used to this kind of race circuit, I would say. It's probably a little bit more difficult to drive. If you had a circuit to compare it to, you would, in Japan, you would probably compare it to like a circuit like Fuji. You know, Fuji has those long straights and very similar mid to high speed corners as well. So Misano is a lot like that, but definitely more of a motorcycle GT3 type track. Again, subscribe here on YouTube on AR TV, and we want to thank you all for watching here this evening, and for wherever you're watching. If you're watching here in the United States, of course, it is afternoon and a very warm pass around the outside here by the 109 of Ben Ford, trying to get maybe a little bit of clean air, and Ben Ford side by side down the back straight. You would call this the back straight into turn 11, still side by side, and I can't believe they did not make contact there. Dexy, he's getting involved into this action into turn 14. And all these cars shuffling around, almost contact on the front nose of Dexy and Ben Ford. Ben Ford, he escaped with a good one there, I would say. But Ben Ford trying to chase down Jess Trombakken. This battle just absolutely close. I would say Jess Trombakken, he is lucky again. Now they're outside moving. This time Ford's going to have the inside line. He gets into the 6th spot. What a move there. Now
Ben
Dexy,
Ford, he risked it for the biscuit, but yeah, you can see now Dexy trying to dice with Jestrombakken around the outside through turns 4 and 5. Now he's got that inside line through 6. Those drivers still trading blows. Dexy, I think so far this race meeting has been the most amazing driver to watch. Very entertaining, but right now it looked like Bogart was trying to make a 3 wide hang into turn number 8. I don't think so. That would have been very aggressive from those drivers, but Dexy gets a move done. Very nicely played from Istvan Dexy to get that move done. Beautiful stuff from the driver now running in P number 7, but you can see in that hard battling, look at how Ben Ford has managed to pull away in the span of only 10 corners. He's developed about a 1.5 second gap between himself and Dexy, and Ben Ford, another very impressive driver from this race meeting thus far, as Jestrombakken and Dexy now going side by side, heading through turns 13 and 14 now, and look at that. Jestrombakken gets a move done to slot his way back into P number 7, and look at that right behind Glam's Glamsetter and Bognar looking to pick up the pieces if these drivers come to blows, which, considering how hard the racing has been thus far, I would not be shocked in the slightest if they make a little bit of contact. They're lucky to get away with it, about 2 laps to go, heading through turn number 14, but I think they are definitely pressing their luck with how hard they have been racing, and I think here is a replay to see how Ben Ford swept around the outside, heading into the first chicane, looks for the move around the outside, 2 wheels on the curb, and beautifully executed stuff from Ben Ford. Just push him off a teeny tiny bit. He didn't really, there was no foul play involved in that. That was just some incredible racecraft from Ben Ford to slot his way into the P6 position. Incredible stuff from the Brit.
I would definitely like to see Jess Trabakin's overtake there just a little bit before this lap got started. And I think he got a little bit sideways. I don't think that car was all the way there. And one is off the track there. Who is that?
Topilatov.
Topilatov. And he is falling backwards here. Unfortunate there for the Russian in the 155. All the way back down to 10. Let's see Jess Trabakin's pass here. Again, I don't think he had that car back straight again. Here they go through turn 11 into 12 and makes the move down the inside, side by side. Has to keep his foot on the gas. That had to have been one of the most sketchiest moments in a race car they have probably ever felt. But what a pass, what an overtake, and I think that one should just go immediately right to Reddit. Whoever has that clip, because that was an absolute overtake.
I think that may end up in the Apex Racing TV highlights reel for the month of July. And speaking of, you can watch the Apex Racing TV highlights reel for the month of June. That was just posted a few days ago, but right now, this battle still continues. Glamsetter trying anything he can to hold Bognar behind, but as Bognar has been held up a teeny tiny bit, Tokpatov is trying to find a way back into the P9 spot. He's probably running a little bit ticked off after that spin hang through turn number 10 not very long ago. So right now, the Russian trying to pick up the pieces after that incident that he just had. Here is a replay of what happened to Anton heading into turn at number 10. Maybe a little bit of contact stuck on the outside. There was contact. Who was that he made contact with? It was up towards the north end of the field. That was a pretty sizable hit to both of those cars, and Toplatov is not going to be happy with that at all. Was that Grassetto? I think you may be right. It was Grassetto, because those two were very close on the racetrack, but they both dropped back, as now Glamsetter looking to try and get the move done to reclaim that P8 spot. Not close enough, and right now it's still close between Dexy and Jestrombach, and heading into the final corner of turn number 16. They're going to be taking the white flag. I think it may be next time by. I think they're just under the radar to take that white flag, so it's 2 more laps to go. Istvan Deshi has put on a fantastic show so far in this race. Jestrombach has been his dance partner throughout a vast majority of this final race of the evening, as now Glamsetter looking to get a move done once again to slot his way into P number 8. Nicely played on the Russian of Anton to slot his way back into P number 8. But as the front two are still maintaining their same gap of about 0.6 of a second, this fight between Jestrombach and Deshi has not cooled off at all.
This is getting intense as we are 2 laps to go. Of course, the battle for the race lead a half a second apart, and the gap is slowly dropping here. And I think we're about to see some fireworks, and that fireworks we have been expecting to see all race long. Back out in front, Neville and Lee Aberdeen. We haven't talked about them hardly at all because of just the chaos everywhere else, but back out to the race leader is again Lee Anderson. Now they're going to come through turn 16. White flag one more time around for these two, and they have been battling like this all race long. If you've been watching us from start to finish, you probably have seen this coming between heat race 1 and 2. This is completely what I expected here for the race lead. Lee Aberdeen has the white flag one more time around to try and get around Lennart Schnebel and get the first win of the season here in the ARA Super Formula Lights. Again, 0.7 of a second. Now gets out of the draft and is going to lose, I think just a ton of time, and doesn't quite close that gap to make the pass happen here. Looking farther back here, we have drivers as well, very close together. Jess Trumbakken, currently in that P6 spot, has to battle and defend it hard here, but Schnebel is also defending a race lead here. 0.6 of a second separating first and second places. Glamsetter and Dexy currently battling, and looks like Glamsetter has fallen back, has had an incident, and has fallen all the way back down to 10th. Now side pretty much 2 by 2 as you see the field slowly coming together. Jess Trumbakken in that 6th spot after losing it. And Jess Trumbakken, hey, and Schnebel comes across the the start-finish line. He takes the checkered flag. Lee Aberdeen, in the 2nd spot. Tobias Olsen, who I thought would have been definitely somebody to keep an eye on for the race, went in the 3rd spot. And Jess Trumbakken gets across the line in 6th. Dexy only 0.079 of a second away from the 6th spot. But wow. Fabio Grassetto in the 4th spot. Ben Ford, after making some good ground up, 3 spots, gets 5th. Jess Trumbakken up 5 spots and had to battle so hard for those spots, Ron. And I think he's definitely he's the hard charger of this race.
Absolutely insane stuff from this A final here for the first ever race of the Apex Racing Academy Super Formula Light Series. And here is a replay to see exactly what went wrong for Christian Glamsetter. It's a small little, it's not even a half spin, it's more of a quarter spin. A drift gone wrong hang through turn number 10 ruins Glamsetter's chances of finishing inside the top 8. Oh, you gotta feel so bad for him. A teeny tiny mistake. He didn't really make a mistake at all this race meeting. The tiny little mistake that he makes right towards the end is going to catch him out the worst. But incredible stuff from this race meeting. I'll tell you what, folks, for those tuning in here on Apex Racing TV, if that isn't a good enough sign of things to come throughout this season, I really don't know what was. That was very close between all the drivers up and down the field. Awesome stuff here, Adam.
Awesome stuff. And let's take a look at the final results here at Misano. Leonard Schnebel had to battle away a win from Lee Anderson. Gets the job done tonight. Lee Anderson 2nd, Tobias Olsen 3rd, Fabio Grassetto 4th place, Ben Ford in 5th after battling for that 5th spot. Again, gained 3 spots here tonight. Jess Trumbakken in the 6th spot. Dexy in 7th. Leonard Bognar in the 8th spot. Christian Glamsetter, a disappointing 9th. I think he'll look at this race and think he could have definitely had those 2 spots that he lost and maybe some more. Tokbolotov currently in the 10th spot, and then Zemstra, Nicholas Ravnuson in 11th. Grigorenko 12th, George Senzov currently 13th, Janik Pletcher in 14th, and Adam Boziuta currently in 15th. And that is the final results here from the A main. And what a finish here, I think, in that A main, and definitely probably one that we're going to remember here for this season. And we'll move on to next week and probably witness much more of the same.
Oh, absolutely. Fuji in 1 week's time is going to be absolutely insane. We can say that as our perspective as commentators. The draft-heavy nature of that start-finish straightaway is going to make turn 1 incredibly intense at the very beginning of that race. But I think for some added perspective, we should probably talk to our race winner from tonight, that being Leonard Schnebel. I'll drag him into the commentary booth. And Leonard, congratulations on the victory from race number 1 of this season. It was a hard-fought afternoon from our perspective here in the commentary booth. I can't even imagine how hard-fought it was for you. So talk us through this opening race of the season.
Yeah, I had a bunch of practice together with my teammates, with Fabio, Nick, and Silo would have joined as well, but he had no time to practice. So we were well prepared for the first race, and I think we showed that. After all, getting P1 in here against lead Tobias was important for me personal, because they are all former Alcantech drivers, so it just feels a bit different to beat them, but I think the win was fair and square, and even if I would have been P2, Lee would have deserved that win as much as I did. I think we fought a hard battle. I pushed quite a bit. I'm pretty sure he as well, and yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you hit the nail on the head in talking about that first lap of the A final, and I really want to ask you about that, because that had to have been insane, spending a vast majority of the very start of this race side by side with, as you point out, drivers that used to race for the team that you're a part of. A little bit of added emotion when it came to that first lap fight, so just talk us through that from your perspective.
Yeah, I had a great start. We get into the lead pretty fast. I tried to stick it in on the inside in turn 1. That worked very well. Then Lee backed out of turn 2, and I found myself in the lead for a couple seconds. Then messed up a bit the following 2 corners, and it was just a hard battle in the first lap. And I think that the outcome was like nobody could have seen if I come out on top or he does. At the end, it was a fair and square battle, I would say. Maybe a little bit of contact here and there, but I'd say very fair.
And it was very fun from our perspective here in the commentary booth. Again, congratulations on the win this evening. Fantastic way to kick off this season. And next time out, we're going to be heading to Fuji Speedway, a bit of a different track and a bit of a different batch of challenges compared to what you drivers had to tackle here this afternoon. So what do you expect out of that race in 1 week's time?
It's not going to be like here. If you get the lead, you can defend everything and everywhere. It's a bit more draft dependent. You got to be way ahead to not get passed on the straight due to the super long start-finish straight. It's going to be a different challenge. We need to get up to pace pretty quick and hopefully get our cars ahead of all of the others, because that's the only way to defend a lead position the most. Yeah, you get what I mean, I guess.
Oh, I get what you mean. It is going to be tough to try and hold on to the lead at Fuji in 1 week's time, and based off the performance you had this evening, I doubt very highly that you aren't going to be at the front in 1 week's time at Fuji. So Leonard, congratulations on the victory of this opening race of the season. Is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Yeah, shout out to the whole team. We did a mega job, despite having some issues here and there, but I think we all did a mega job this week, and especially to Fabio. It was his first race for us. He did a great job getting the M win, and I think that's the most we can hope for, getting both categories a P1 in. And yeah, huge shout out to my team, as I said, and to you guys as well. I'm gonna be watching the stream tomorrow or maybe later on. We'll see.
Well, I think considering the issues that iRacing has run into as this race is going on, I think you may have some time to watch it throughout the rest of today. But anyway, Leonard, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth. Congratulations on the victory, as I said. Hope to see you next time out at Fuji. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Thank you.
I think that was the only driver that we can really interview. We're a little bit short on time here on this broadcast, but Adam, I'll pass it off to you.
Well, definitely an exciting first race of the ARA Super Formula Lights series here, and of course, As you mentioned, iRacing currently down for maintenance, and so that's an unfortunate event, but you can always watch the replay here on YouTube, and of course catch up with all the action by just hitting that subscribe button and hit the notification bell when so you get notified when we go live again here. So next Thursday, same time, same place at Fuji, and that should be a great race. And like as Leonard said, I think that's going to be a little bit more challenging because it is draft dependent, and so we might see a little bit more chaos like we saw here today. So thank you all so much for watching. My name is Adam, for Ron and everybody here at Apex Racing TV. Thank you so much for watching, and good night here from Misano.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www. Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.